Welcome, everybody. This is Autonomy Season 3, Week 14. This is our guest speaker slot for the week. This is Cliff Ennico. He's a local attorney. He's local to Connecticut, but he works with people all over the world. He's excellent at what he does. I first came across Cliff's work while doing research on YouTube, and I found in that YouTube series of videos an attorney with a sense of humor who's also seriously educated on the trials and tribulations of becoming an entrepreneur. Cliff, welcome to the forum. There's many students here. There's many more on the replay, and they'll be listening intently to your presentation today. Thanks for coming.
Well, thank you, Richard, very much, and thanks for having me. Welcome to everybody at Autonomy Unlimited. I love the name. I just love the name. I got to tell you that right now, because that basically is what all my clients are looking to achieve: is unlimited autonomy. That's what they're looking to do. I myself have been autonomous myself for many years. I tease that. I tease that. That the whole world now, because of the pandemic, everybody now is working the way I have for the last 40 years of my life. This is what you see here in the background. This is where I have lived for the last at least 30 years of my life. I've been a lawyer for 40, worked on Wall Street for 10 years, and then I quit it. I got burned out. I came up here, started doing stuff on my own, and it's led me to some really incredible places. My wife, she feeds the food under the door. She hasn't seen me in 30 years. She just sees the food under the door. The plate comes back empty. She knows I'm still alive. It's one of those kind of things. But let me just say a few things, if I may, about myself, if it's okay. And just to be, there's only really, a couple of things you need to know about me. The first of which I have to thank Richard, because he did my job for me. He got the bad thing out of the way first, which is I am an attorney by training and education. I am not one by personality. I think you'll find my personality is a little different than most attorneys, but I am an attorney by trade. But the second thing you need to know about me is I do have a little footnote in media history. Back in the 1990s, I actually had a TV show on public television. It was called Money Hunt. And the concept, it was really the first reality TV show for entrepreneurs. Basically, the way it worked is we had an entrepreneur come on the show in front of a panel of experts. They pitched their business plan, and we tried to shoot them down, showed them how to do things differently, whatever. Does this sound like a show you may remember? Does this sound like some show you're aware of? Does this sound familiar to you? It's Shark Tank. We had the first Shark Tank show on television. It was on PBS from 1994 to 2003. If you go to youtube.com, you can see some of the old episodes. Type in Money Hunt TV show. You can see what I looked like 20 years ago. But we had the first Shark Tank show. We had the first reality show ever for entrepreneurs, and I'm very proud of that. And that's led to a lot of interesting things in my life. The last thing I want to talk about, and this is very important to those of you on the call, I do have a YouTube channel, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later on. But I actually have somewhere in between 40 and 50 one-hour videos. These are not 5-minute videos. These are very instructional things. They're programs that I've given to SCORE chapters and business groups around the country. They're all free. I don't charge anything for it. If you go to youtube.com and search for Cliff Ennico, I always go by Cliff, never Clifford. Clifford is the big red dog and I get a lot of hassle when I try to use that name, because I get letters from attorneys saying I can't use that because Clifford is, what can I say? I mean, this is the legal world that I live in. I get these letters too. It's not just you. I get them too sometimes from crazy attorneys around the country. So it's Cliff Ennico. That's what I go by. If you just go to youtube.com and search for Cliff Ennico, you'll see all 40 of my videos. I'm going to be covering a lot of stuff in the next 90 minutes. I'm kind of going to be a little scattergun, and I apologize for that, but I really don't know enough about each of you to know where you're all at. Some of you may be just starting out. Some of you may be a little bit further along. I'm going to try to give you something for everybody. If I'm talking about something that's a little too basic for you, just be patient. The next slide, I assure you, will have something that's more relevant to your situation. Now you know I'm a lawyer. We lawyers always tell you what we're not going to do first, and then we tell you what we're going to do. The most important one is the second one. I know some of you have legal and tax questions. I will try to answer them on this program if I can, but there's a very big difference between giving legal and tax advice and legal and tax information. Legal and tax information is, here's what the law is all about. This is what the tax code requires you to do. That's information. Advice is, Joe, this is what you should do, and Richard, this is why you should do something different. I cannot custom tailor this to your individual situations because, frankly, I don't know any of you well enough yet. Hopefully, if you like this program, you'll call me, we'll develop a relationship, and I'll be able to give you advice. But for today, I just can't. So just take this for what it's worth. If I say something that sounds like a great idea and you do it and it just turns out to be a disaster, you lose your business, you go bankrupt, your spouse divorces you, the kids hate you now, the dog pees on your leg, you're living in a diaper box under the Brooklyn Bridge somewhere, you can't sue anybody. That's what this slide is all about. So let's begin. This is what we're going to talk about today. This program is really geared for people who are doing either a consulting practice or a one-person service business. That's really what this program is all about. Those of you who are doing retail or something else, you're selling on eBay or Amazon, that's a different kind of a program. I do have some videos for you on my YouTube channel, but that's not what we're going to be talking about today. We're talking mostly about people who are doing 1 to 2 person service-oriented businesses. We're going to talk about the difference between employees and independent contractors. We're going to talk about how to set up your business and how to deal with taxes. We're going to talk about consulting contracts, what they look like, how you negotiate those. You're going to talk about how you market the one-person business, which is very, very important. If you don't market yourself well, you will fail. It's that simple. Marketing is the key to small business success. End of story. How to run, grow, and eventually sell your practice, and then I'll say some funny things to wrap up. So let's talk about some basics. Those of you who've just been downsized, you maybe have been working for a while, you're no longer working because of the pandemic, you're looking to start something new and go to your plan B. By the way, if you're in that situation, congratulations. Congratulations on being laid off. That sounds so weird to say that, but you are in a blessed position right now. For the first time in your life, you have the chance to do something truly great with your life. You couldn't do it before because you were working 60 hours a week for the man. Now you are on your own and you have a chance to really achieve something extraordinary. Take advantage of this opportunity. A lot of the Fortune 2000 corporations, if you go back and you look at when they were originally incorporated, most of them were incorporated during the Great Depression or during an economic recession. It's amazing how many great businesses were started during times of distress. Like now. Take advantage of this. Necessity is the mother of invention. We all know that phrase, but this is what it means in real life. When you are self-employed, you are what is called an independent contractor for tax and legal purposes. Now, those of you who've done some research online, you know the IRS has 23 criteria they use to determine whether somebody's an employee or an independent contractor, but I'm going to make this real simple for you. Okay, I'm really going to make this very simple. The key to understanding independent contractor status, the gigs economy, is that if your client has the ability to direct and control your activities, then you are an employee. You are not an independent contractor. Now, what does that mean? I'm going to give you a very graphic example. Let's say it's kind of hard to do this for a consulting practice. Let's say that you're an eBay seller. Let's say that you're a professional eBay seller. You sell stuff on eBay and Amazon online. If I'm working for you and you have the ability to do this to me, hey, Cliff, stop what you're doing right now. Stop working on the books. We just got this big order in for 50,000 widgets. I really want to get this out today. The UPS store is closing in 2 hours. I really want to get the truck loaded. Help me pack these boxes. Help me get this truck loaded. And as soon as I'm out of here, you can go back and do whatever it was you were doing before. If you have the ability to jerk me around like that from one project to another, I am your employee. I am not an independent contractor. That's the definition of an independent contractor. Now, as an attorney, I am not an employee of any of my clients. At any given time, I'm working for 20, 30 different people. They got me running all over the place. Don't get me wrong. You can certainly give me a deadline. You can say, hey, Cliff, I need this project done by Friday. I'm having a meeting with somebody. I need to have the contract looked at. And if I respect, our relationship, I will do everything I can to make sure that deadline is met. But what you can't do is what that eBay seller just did to me. You can't say, Cliff, stop this webinar. Get off this webinar right now. I need you to look up my contract the next 15 minutes. Then you can go back and talk to Richard and the gang. You can't do that. That's what makes me an independent contractor. So between now and Friday, when you need your contract, I decide what I work on. Okay, so I'm going to do this webinar now, then I'm going to do some work for Joe, then I'm going to do some work for Richard. That's what makes me an independent contractor, is that I'm in control of my time. Okay, if that's the relationship you have with your clients, then everything's perfect. You are a 1099. But if not, you are an employee. Okay, watch out for clients that want to lock up your time. Okay, this is very important. Whenever you get a client that becomes a time vampire, there's a risk that you're getting into an inadvertent employee situation with them. I always talk. This is the myth of the one-person consultant. There is nothing more fragile in the world of small business than a consultant that only has one client, or any kind of service business. You are heavily dependent on that one client for your livelihood, and they will take advantage of it. I mean, I talk all the time to people who think they're consultants, but they're really working 50 hours a week for a single company. That is not an independent contractor relationship. That person is an employee of that company, and they don't know it. And the company doesn't know it either. And if the IRS finds out about it, they're going to get slammed for not paying FICA, for not withholding taxes the way they're supposed to do. The whole thing about being an independent contractor is there's no withholding from your paycheck. If you bill $1,000, you get $1,000 back from the client, and it's your job to deal with the taxes. We'll talk more about taxes in a single moment. Another thing I want to talk about specifically for you consulting people out here, and you're going to see it, a lot of clients are going to require you to form an LLC, because they have it in their heads that if by forming an LLC, they get out of this whole employee independent contractor thing, that a company, an LLC, cannot be an employee legally. They got this in their heads. Legally, it is totally wrong. I will tell you, a single member LLC is indistinguishable from its owner for tax and other purposes. It isn't. There are other reasons to form LLCs, which we'll talk about in a minute, but avoiding taxes is not one of those. If you're a single member LLC, and you're working 50 hours a week for a client, you are an employee, even though you have an LLC. But don't say anything to your clients about that. Let's let them live in their little fantasy world, because it actually helps you in some respects. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Just keep in mind that the lesson so far is be very careful about clients that try to monopolize your time, because they don't realize it, but they're getting into a real legal bind when they do that to you. Okay. Also, too, if anything happens to that client, you're dead. I mean, that's just the obvious thing. As Mark Twain once said, it's okay to put all your eggs in one basket, but if you do, you better wash that basket. Make sure your eyes are focused on it 24/7. A consultant with only one client is a very fragile individual indeed. Okay, so if you're going to get started in a one-person service business of any kind, not just consulting, here are the basic things that you need. Let's go down the list real quickly. You do need business cards and stationery. Now, I can hear some of you guys groaning out there saying, wait a minute, we live in a digital world, Cliff. This was good advice in 1980 when you were a young kid, but it's not really great advice now. We're all digital. We're all on our phones. And all of that is true. In fact, I think the pandemic is going to accelerate this. We are going to be moving much faster now into a digital world because of the pandemic. But unfortunately, as a lawyer, let me tell you, we're still somewhat tethered to the brick and mortar world. And I don't think we're ever completely going to disappear from that, at least not unless our bodies evolve into something much different than they are today. You do need business cards and stationery. You will be dealing with people in the brick and mortar world, and they expect to see these things. My suggestion, this is a company that I use. It's called Tuttle Printing. They're up in Vermont. They're very cost effective, and they really do a nice job on this stuff too. I do 3 or 4 different types of businesses. I need 3 or 4 different types of stationery. Some have my photo on it, some don't. They really do a very nice job, and they're very affordable, but there are plenty of other companies out there that do this. I'm just recommending them because it's who I use. I do not own stock in the company. I don't get anything out of this. It's just a free ad for them. I'm acting as their billboard right now. You need a dedicated home office space. Now, all of us now are working out of the home office these days. I'm going to say another couple of slides. I'm going to talk a little bit about working out of a home office, some of the legal do's and don'ts. The key word here is dedicated. It must be dedicated to the business that you are doing. If you look behind me and see all the crap that I have in my office here, there is nothing here that is not relevant to a law practice. I don't have anything here that you look at, wait a minute, lawyers What's that they're doing that? That doesn't belong in an office. The key word is dedicated. We'll talk more about that later. A limited liability company. Now, I could easily devote the entire 90 minutes today to talking about LLCs, corporations, S corporations, the different ways you can legally form a business. I do have a whole hour YouTube video on my YouTube channel that deals with that if you're interested. But frankly, it's very boring and it's very easy to get bogged down to that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make it very easy for you in two ways. Number one, I'm going to give you something for free. If you go to my website at cliffennico.com, I have a bunch of websites, but that's the one from my law practice, cliffennico.com. Go to the resources page and download. I have a 7-page PDF file there called Demystifying the Business Organization, 7 pages long. Print it out, sit down tonight with a strong VSOP brandy or other liquor of choice. Brandy's that's my liquor of choice. I go with the wrappers. I'm a brandy and cognac kind of guy. I do, but I drink the cheap stuff. They don't. I mean, I'm just a lawyer after all. I don't make any real money. All right. But download this thing. It's only 7 pages long, and read the whole thing. Don't just go to the LLC section. Read the whole thing, because you kind of have to know a little bit about how partnerships work in order to understand how the LLC works. Read it. It'll take you about an hour of your life, and I guarantee you will come away knowing as much as most attorneys know about the difference between LLCs, corporations, S corps, and all that jazz. It's 1 hour out of your life is all I'm asking for here, and it'll save us a lot of time today. But the second thing I'm going to help you out with, I'm going to make it real easy for you. Unless you live in New York City, and I'm being very specific, the 5 boroughs of New York City, unless you live in New York City, the LLC is the way to go. 99.9% of the time. It's simple. It's easy to operate. It does give you some protection against liability, although it doesn't help you with taxes at all. There are no real tax savings in forming a single person LLC, but it's the best way to do things. It makes you look more professional. Apex LLC looks a heck of a lot better than Cliff Ennico doing business as Apex Consultants. Okay, it just looks better. It's better for marketing purposes. They're usually very cheap to form. The one exception is New York City. For those of you who are living in the 5 boroughs of New York City, and why are you doing that in the middle of a pandemic, but we're not going to go into that. The S corporation is the better way to go in New York City, only because New York City, unique of all the 50 states, has made it prohibitively expensive to form LLCs. It's just a bizarre thing. They're the only part of the piece of the country that has made corporations easier to form than LLCs. All other parts of the country, you're talking LLC. If you're in New York City, give me a call. My phone number will appear at the end of the presentation, and I'll be happy to explain to you why the S Corp is better. But just take it on faith from me now that it is. You need contract forms. We're going to talk about contracts in a minute. A website and a LinkedIn profile are essential if you're doing consulting. For other kinds of businesses, so for example, if you're doing retail, you probably want to have an Instagram presence. But for a consultant, you really don't need to be on Instagram. A video of me sitting at my desk drafting a contract is boring as crap. Okay, let's face it, it's not going to be a good Instagram video. I'm not going to get a lot of hits on that. But a LinkedIn profile for me is very important. I want other professionals, to be able to relate to me as a fellow professional. Whenever you're doing B2B of any kind, LinkedIn, you got to have a LinkedIn profile. I also believe in having a website. Now, I know some of you are saying, well, Cliff, that's very 1995, and I get that, but now everything is Facebook, it's social media, it's LinkedIn, it's all this stuff. You really don't have to have a website anymore. And my response is, with all due respect, baloney. You still need a website. Even in the year of our Lord 2020, you still need a website of your own. Why? Because people expect you to have it. If your name is Cliff Ennico, I expect you to be cliffennico.com. And if I don't see that, that's kind of a credibility buzzkill for me. I want to see that you have a website of your own. Secondly, and this is just as true today as it was 25 years ago when we first became aware of the internet and started doing things online. There's only one place in the entire universe where you can sell stuff and keep 100 online and keep 100% of what you make. And that is the stuff that you sell from your own website. This is where you make the rules. If you're selling stuff from Facebook, Facebook's getting a cut of what you make, and it's their rules that govern, not yours. When it's on your website, You keep 100% of what you make, and it's your rules that govern the relationship. You set the parameters as to what rules apply on your website. When you're selling on other sites, they're the ones that are in control. You are not. You should always have a website of your own, a .com. Nobody gets, I hate to say it, the .biz, the .info, the .us. Those are wonderful, but to be honest with you, the search engines don't find them as easily as they find the .com. Keep it memorable. I would rather you be, Cliff Ennico Consulting, .com than, some weird thing .biz. I think you're better off being it. If you can't get, your name as a .com number, if your name is John Jones or something like that, then come up with, Jones Specialty Consulting.com. Make it easy to remember. That's the key to a .com name. Get something that's memorable, even if it doesn't really relate to what you do very well. Make it memorable, make it easy to understand, and people will try to find you. Let's talk about insurance for a minute. Excuse me. You need insurance. There are two kinds of insurance you need. If you have an office, or if you are seeing clients in your home, you need what's called, you need liability coverage. There are different names for this in different states. Sometimes it's called commercial liability. Sometimes it's called general liability. Sometimes it's called umbrella policy. But you need some kind of, this is slip and fall insurance. Someone visits your office, they slip and fall on the ice, and they break their ass. This is the insurance that protects you in those kinds of situations. The second type of policy that you need, and what I usually advise people to get, is what we call 1 and 2. That means $1 million per occurrence, $2 million in the aggregate. Overall. So it's a $2 million policy with a $1 million limit on each accident or lawsuit that you get into. That's called 1 and 2. That's what everybody gets pretty much. And when somebody sues you, they sue you for $1 million. So, anything less than that is coverage. It's cheap as all hell, but it's not going to protect you. The second kind of policy you need is errors and omissions. This is malpractice insurance, basically, against your screw up. So if you're an IT consultant and you do work on my computer and you allow a virus in through the back door, and I lose all my data, I get clobbered with one of those ransomware things, and I lose my entire business because of your incompetence, I'm going to sue you over that. That's the E&O policy that would protect you there. The one policy of insurance you do not need is workers' comp, unless you have employees. If you have W-2 employees, then you're required by law to have workers' comp. But when it's just you, or you and a partner, you do not need, the owners of a business are not considered employees for tax purposes, so you do not need to have workers' compensation insurance. A lot of people get confused about that. Some of your clients will say, well, we want you to have workers' comp. The answer has to be no, I'm not eligible for it. I'm an independent contractor. If you want to make me your employee, and withhold taxes, well, then that's great. Your workers' comp will cover me, but I'm not going to get workers' comp when it's just me. That's a waste of money. Don't do that. Last but not least, you need a client. You need clients. A consultant without a client is a hobby. That's what it is. Don't get me wrong. Hobbies are great, but the thing about businesses is you make money at them. That's what you do. Whenever you're doing something that's fun, but you're not making any money, we call that a hobby. So you got to have a client. All right, let's talk about taxes. Okay. I do recommend, if you're going to do a solo consulting business, that you form an LLC. It's useful for marketing purposes. Some clients will expect you to have one, so it's a good idea to have it from the day you start. There is a little trick, which some of you know about, that once you hit a certain level of income, it may make sense to convert your LLC into an S corporation. There's a little trick you can do with S corporations where you can take your income and divide it into two parts. Part one is compensation for your services, salary that you make for the work that you do. And the second part is the profit that you make, the distribution of profits that you make at the end of the day. You can take your income, divide it into those two parts. And by doing that, you save a ton of money on the FICA and Medicare taxes that you pay the government each year. That's a nice little trick with S corporations. Usually you have to make about $100,000 a year in net income before the tax savings is good enough to do that. And something that a lot of people don't realize, you don't have to become an S corporation to be taxed as an S corporation. You can keep your LLC, but elect to have it taxed as if it were an S corporation. Your accountant can help you with that. There are a couple of pieces of paper you have to file with the IRS and your state tax authority, but you don't have to form a whole new entity at that point. You can elect to convert to an S corp at that later time. So don't worry about the S corporation stuff. You can keep your LLC. The LLC is the way to go in 99.9% of the situations, unless you're in New York City. That's the one place that's different. Now, if you want me to help you with this, that's perfectly fine. I do a lot of LLCs for people. I charge a one-time fee of $400 plus the filing fees, which are usually like $100 or $200. So if you're hiring me or another attorney, your budget should probably be somewhere in the $500 to $600 range to set up an LLC. There are places online where you can form them cheaper. LegalZoom is the one that everybody knows about, but there are a ton of services that will set up an LLC for you for, a half maybe of what an attorney would charge. But I'm a little nervous about them, and I'm not just knocking my competition. You got to be careful because they don't do all the steps necessary to set up your LLC. The one step they never do, they never register you for state and local taxes. They will get you an EIN with the IRS, a tax ID number, but they don't register you for any state and local taxes. They'll tell you you have to do it, but they leave it to you to go online and to go to the state tax authority and figure out what their 20-page questionnaire is all about. If you're hiring an attorney or an accountant, we will do that as part of the service. So every step is being taken care of. That's the one difference between, you're not paying the full price, but you're also not getting the full service either when you use a service like LegalZoom. Okay, so form an LLC, get a federal tax ID number. Now, some of you know that if you are a sole proprietor, you don't have to form an LLC. You can just be Cliff Ennico doing business as Cliff's Consulting Service or something like that. You can do that. That's perfectly legal. You are allowed to use your social security number as a tax ID if you are a sole proprietor, but it's a really, really bad idea to do that because at the end of the year, we're going to talk about this in a minute, you're going to have to send paperwork to a lot of clients with your tax ID on it. And forgive me, while I love you all and I think you're all wonderful, exciting people, entrepreneurs are my life, I don't want any of you knowing my social security number. I'm a real privacy bug when it comes to that stuff. You should never give your social out to anyone who, unless it's absolutely required, by law. You don't want to do that. Get an ID. Even if you're a sole proprietor, get yourself a tax ID number and use that thing. Here's what will happen, because here's what's going to happen. In January of each year, you're going to get a ton of mail from all the clients that you worked for the previous year. They're going to send you a document called a W-9. This is a request for your tax ID number, and you must respond to it. Usually within 10 days. You have to give this person your tax ID, and then they're going to send you a 1099 showing how much income they paid you during the year. Just the gross amount that they paid you. And that form, they send a copy to the IRS, and you have to enclose a copy to the IRS when you file your tax return on your Form 1040 every year. It is required by law. And they must send you the 1099 by January 31st. When you're a consultant, January is your least favorite month because that's when you're getting all this ton of mail, from all your clients with all these 1099s. That you have to attach to your tax return, which is a pain in the ass. Now, if you yourself are using subcontractors, if you paid someone more than $600 a year as an independent contractor, you have to send them a 1099 and a W-9 requesting their tax ID number. Do you see now why I don't want you giving out your social security number or using your social security number as a tax ID? Because if you're sending this, if you have 30 subcontractors, you got to tell all those people what your social is. That's not a good place to be. Some of these people are crooks. Okay, your privacy is totally blown. If you ever do that and you get your identity stolen, don't come crying to me because it's really your fault. Get a tax ID. Use your tax ID. When you are a solo consultant, you report your income on Schedule C, which is part of your 1040 every year. A little piece of advice on this: when you have a tax ID, make sure your accountant knows what your tax ID is. And here's why. Because most accountants that I know use TurboTax. And TurboTax is a wonderful program, but it's designed to automate and streamline things. So when you set up your tax return, when they set up the tax return template to do your 1040, the first thing they do is they type in your social security number, and that appears as a header on all of the tax return pages. That's a nice thing, except for one thing. Your Schedule C should have your EIN on it, not your social. Okay, if you and you're so you got to make sure your accountant knows what your EIN is, so that they know to put that on the Schedule C pages, not your social security number. Because here's what happens: you fill out you fill out Schedule C, your accountant files it, the social security number is on all the pages, but you have an EIN. The IRS on April 15th, or I guess this year it's July 15th, is going to look at that and say, wait a minute, we never got a tax return from this guy, Cliff Ennico, whose EIN 1234567. He didn't file his tax return on time. Let's send him a nasty letter. Okay, you're going to get a nasty letter saying, hey, it's come to our attention, you formed this LLC last year, we didn't get a tax return. Well, you did file a tax return, but it was under the wrong number. That's why they think they didn't get it. Make sure your accountant knows your EIN so that the Schedule C has the right number on it. All the other pages of your 1040 can have your social, but not the Schedule C pages. Okay, let's leave taxes now. And again, I could do on each one of these slides, I could do a whole 90-minute presentation on each one of these slides. Okay, so I know you have a lot of questions. I'll try to answer the bulk of them before we part company today. But let's keep going, because again, I always find that when you ask a question, 9 times out of 10, the answer's on the next slide. I'm pretty good that way. Should you work out of a home? Well, obviously, with the pandemic, we are all working out of our home offices right now for the time being, although some of us do have to see clients and we do have to have a real office. Most consulting businesses can be run from a home office. I've been doing it for 30 years of my life. Next year, it'll be 30 years that I've been doing it. I've been working out of this room, this very room. There's nothing illegal, immoral, or fattening about it. In fact, it can be a very beneficial thing. You can take the home office deduction on your taxes, and this is a wonderful deduction. What this means is a certain percentage of all your household expenses can be deducted on your taxes, from your taxes, when you work out of home. Can you imagine that? Now, if you rent an office, you can deduct your rent, but that's all you can deduct. When you work out of a home office, you can deduct a certain percentage of house cleaning services, repairs, anything that you do to the home. A certain percentage of that can be taken off your taxes as a deduction. It's an amazing deduction. One of the great gifts the IRS has given the self-employed community over the years. But as always, there are some rules on this. And those, by the way, those of you who are worried that it's an audit trigger, it is not an audit trigger at all. I mean, I've been taking it for over 20 years. I've never had a problem with this, with the home office deduction. But there are some rules that do apply to that. First of all, and the most important rule is, you must have a dedicated office space that is nothing but business, but for business purposes. So if you walk into my office, you will not see anything that you would not see in a real office. Here's Cliff Ennico's rule. If it's okay to have it in a real office, you can have it in your home office. If it's not okay to have it in a real office, you should not have it in your home office. If the IRS ever audits you for home office deduction, the first thing they do is they go around the office and they look for inappropriate stuff that doesn't belong there. So if you're working from your kitchen table, that is not a dedicated home office space. At least 3 times a day, people are eating there, which you would not do in a real office. So just use common sense. A spare bedroom, if you have any kind of an outbuilding or like a barn or something like that, try to have a dedicated. It can be a basement. You can use a part of your basement, but not the whole basement. What I recommend, if you're going to use your basement, figure out what part of the basement you're going to use, and then use duct tape to measure off that space. And then the pool table can be right on the other side of the duct tape, but within the duct tape, no pool table, no tchotchkes from your grandkids, nothing like that. Everything is wholly related to your business. Okay. So for example, like pictures of your spouse and kids, absolutely, that's okay. You'd have that in a real office, maybe a little CD player for music if you're working after hours, that's okay. Doggy bed, no, unless you have a service animal. what we used to call a seeing eye dog in the old days. If you have a service animal, the doggy bed is okay because you would have that in your real office. But if the dog is just cute and he's not a service animal, no, the dog goes on the other, goes outside the office. Okay, you have that. Hopefully, the dog is going outside the office on a regular basis. If the dog is going inside the office, you got to make you have a much bigger problem than the IRS. Okay, and do not invite me to visit you at any point, even after the pandemic is over. I don't want to go anywhere near that office. Okay. Okay, so the other thing about the home office deduction is what's this percentage that I've been talking about? It's really very simple. Once you have a dedicated home office, you can deduct a percentage of all of your household expenses, virtually everything, just about. The percentage is a fraction. The top number is the number of square foot in your home office, and the bottom is the total square footage of your entire home, measured interior wall to interior wall. So if you live in a home that has 1,000 square feet and your home office is 100 square feet, you can take 10%, 100 divided by 1,000, of all your household expenses as a home office deduction. The deduction is that simple. Measure your home office, have a contractor come over and do a professional measurement so you know exactly to a hundredth of an inch what your square footage is. That helps if you ever get audited. But take the home office deduction. It used to be an audit trigger back in the 90s, but it's not an audit trigger now. There's no reason for anyone not to take it. Now, some people cannot work out of home offices. So if you're planning to see clients in your office, it's probably a better idea not to use a home office at all. You should have a little office space where you can meet with the person, by appointment using social distancing. It's probably better to have a little office, but you don't have to pay for a luxurious office. Get the cheapest office you can find. Consider what's called an executive office suite. There are places out there that allow you to rent space by the month. So it's not a 5-year lease. It's not unbreakable. You rent a month at a time. They have a receptionist. The offices are fully furnished. Sometimes you can just rent them when you need them. And they have telephone answering services. They'll answer the phone. Law offices of Cliff Ennico. They're a great deal. Try to find when there's a company called Regus, Regus, that has a chain of these around the country. But just look in the local, phone directory and look for executive office suites and see if there's a place like that nearby. In the economic times that we are in, goal number one is to keep your overhead as low as possible. And I'll say that at least 5 times during this program. In a time, we are on the verge of a major recession, if not a depression. The people who are going to survive this, the service providers, are the people who keep their costs at an absolute bare minimum. They're the ones who are going to survive this. Everybody else is going to have problems. If you're stuck with an above market rent, an unbreakable lease you can't get out of, I have pity for you. I really do. Get an attorney and be prepared to fight to get out of that sucker, because you're not going to be around in 2 years. I have a whole video for those of you. This is not really a home office video, but if you check out my YouTube channel, I have a video called "From Cubicle to Home Office." If you search for Cliff Ennico Home Office on YouTube, you'll get to the video. I have a whole hour on this topic. All right, how do you price your services? Especially, let's say you're doing some weird kind of consulting. Let's say you're consulting to a very niche industry, and there aren't a whole lot of people that do the kind of consulting that you do. So you can't really just look up, in a book somewhere how much people charge. Here's some basic advice that I do. First of all, find out what your competition charges. If there is competition, if there are lots of other kinds of consultants in your area, call them up, pretend to be a client, get a fee quote from them, find out what their basic hourly rates are. And once you know that information, give your clients a little bit of a discount below what your competition is charging. Not a lot. No more than 10 to 20% of what your competition is charging. And the reason for that is very simple. This is one of the most important points I want to make. The biggest mistake that consultants make, the biggest mistake that startup consultants make by leaps and bounds. Number one, they always underprice themselves, and that can lead to disaster. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, because I can understand why people do it. Well, I'm new. There's other people that have been doing this for years. I'm not going to get any business unless I'm the low cost guy, so I'm going to go out there. Tell me the truth, though. Let me ask a very honest question. Would any of you hire an attorney who charged $20 an hour? How many of you would hire an attorney? How many of you are saying, wow, 20 bucks? By the way, I'm not doing this. Okay, let's just be very honest about this. I'm not at that rate. Okay, I'm a little more expensive than that. No one would hire an attorney. But why? This is not a great deal. What's wrong with this guy? $20 an hour for an attorney? Is he in prison? What is this guy? Who is this person that's charging 20 bucks an hour? Nobody get. What's the famous line from the old Meatloaf song? There ain't no Coupe de Ville hiding in the bottom of a Cracker Jack box. That's just too good a deal. Okay, at 20 bucks an hour. You want to know something about that person? Why are they 20? Are they licensed? Are they legal? Here's the thing. But there's another reason too why you should never underprice yourself, because when clients sense that you don't know what you're doing, they'll take advantage of that. They'll say, well, you know what, Cliff, I hear where you're coming from. You want to be paid 80 bucks an hour, but I got to tell you something. I can go out today and get another consultant for 60 bucks an hour. You're not going to make any money doing this. I'll give you a deal here. I'll pay you 60 bucks an hour. I'll let you do a couple of things for me and build your name up, but I got to let you know 80 bucks an hour. In the meantime, what you don't know, your nearest competitor is charging $120 an hour, but you don't know that. People will seduce you into doing bad deals if you don't know what you're doing. And let me tell you, when you get into the habit of working below what you're worth, you will end up hating your clients and hating your life. You will. It's the most miserable situation that I can think of to be in. Never underprice yourself at all. And let me tell you, if you underprice yourself, and once word gets around that that's what you charge, it's very hard to raise your fees. Every 5 to 10 years or so, I raise my fees by $25 an hour. Okay, I'm currently at $400 an hour. It's taken me, 5 years ago, I was charging $300 an hour. I go up about, $25 a year, more or less. And believe me, every time I do, my clients squeal like stuck pigs. Why are you doing this? Why are you charging more? You're raising your price. It's only $25 or more. But this is not going to kill people. Why are you fighting that? Why are you pushing back on this? Really, they get horrible when you do this. It's very hard to raise your practice. Better to overshoot. If you're not sure what the market will bear, go high. Okay. Well, I'll tell you, my normal fee is $500 an hour. And if the client goes, okay, then what you do is you say, okay, tell you what, I know that seems a little bit high. Listen, I like you. I really believe in what you're doing. I think that there's a long-term relationship here. For the first 6 months, I'll do my work for $400 an hour, but with the understanding that's only to sort of whet your appetite and get you to the point where you're familiar with me. Once we know more about each other, once you feel comfortable with me, I will want to charge my normal $500 rate. Meanwhile, your nearest competition is at $300 an hour. You're still making out great at $400 an hour. You see the game that's being played here? If you overcharge, you can always discount. If you undershoot, it's very hard to raise up. Well, I know I was $100 an hour last year, but now I've just discovered the market's really at $300 an hour. I feel like an idiot, so I'm going to start charging $300 an hour. Try selling your clients on that. It's not going to happen. Okay, so that's my little thing on pricing. Now let's start talking about contracts. Okay, specifically your consulting contract. Larger clients, first of all, if your client is much bigger than you are, they will want you to sign their standard form. And I will tell you their standard form is going to be like 50 pages long with all kinds of clauses referencing federal statutes you never even knew existed, and they want you to comply with all these 10,000 pages of things on data privacy and all this kind of crap. Okay. Remember, nothing is standard, though. There's no such thing as a boilerplate contract. You could always negotiate them. My approach to this is whenever one of my consulting clients, and I have over 200 consulting clients around the nation, just so you know, I work with about 200 consultants in virtually every industry that you can think of. My deal with them is whenever they get hit with a contract that their client wants them to sign, send it to me. I'll review it. I'll comment on it. We'll spend a little few minutes on the phone, and I charge a one-time flat fee of $400 for that. That's 1 hour of my time. That's what I do. That's what I charge for that. Now, again, so that's, again, reviewing their contract. Now, if your clients are smaller than you are or the same size that you are, chances are they don't have a consulting contract form at all. They will want you to produce your form of contract. So you need to have some basic contract forms, have an attorney prepare them for you. There are 4 contracts you specifically need. You need a confidentiality and non-disclosure agreement, what we call an NDA. Some clients won't even want to talk to you until you say you're going to keep their information confidential. This should be a mutual confidentiality agreement, meaning you're going to keep their stuff confidential and they're going to keep your stuff confidential. It goes both ways. That's always the better way to go. It's kind of a boilerplate document, but you got to have one. Next, a short form consulting agreement. Don't hit a client with a 30-page contract. They won't even read it. You want something that's more like in the 5 to 6 page range and that looks like a letter from you to the client. What we call a letter form of agreement is what you want. Thirdly, you need a subcontractor agreement. Every once in a while, a client will need you to do something and you got to bring in someone. So let's say, for example, a client wants to hire you, but they want you to help with their web design. Now, you're not a web designer, so you want to bring in a web designer to do that piece of the work, and the 2 of you will split the fee however you decide to do it. You need to have an agreement with the subcontractor to make sure that that relationship is clear. And there are 2 things that should always be in your subcontract agreement. One is they don't get paid until you get paid. You don't want to ever get caught into a situation where the client owes you money, but you got to pay the subcontract tomorrow. We call that the monkey in the middle problem. You don't want to be there. The second thing you want to have is what we call non-circumvention language, which sounds like a big word, but it's really a very simple concept. It means that the subcontract cannot get so cozy with your client that they end up stealing the client from you. That happens. When clients get to work with your people, they get very comfortable with certain people. And after a while, they start communicating with them directly and cutting you out of the middle. And you don't want that. Or if you do, you want to get a piece of it. There's language in there that's very customary in subcontracts. Make sure you have that clause in there somewhere. For those of you who are interested, I do have a flat fee offer. If you want me to help you do your contract suite, prepare these 4 documents for you, including some telephone time, it's a one-time flat fee of $800. So use that when talking to local attorneys, use that as your benchmark. This is about what you should be paying for these kinds of services. Okay, so let's talk about the contract now. So finally, you got a gig, you got a client that wants to talk to you. So how do you negotiate the contract? Well, the consulting contract, there are 4 things that have to be nailed down precisely. I can live with a lot of ambiguity in a contract. I can live with fuzzy language. I'm not one of these attorneys who insists that every comma, every semicolon has to be perfect in a 30-page document. I'm not one of those people. I can live with some fuzzy language, but there are 4 places where I don't want fuzzy language. I want them perfect. And these are the 4. What services will you perform? What are you going to be doing? Bullet, 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 bullet. Which services are you not performing? Where's the end of this? I'm not going to give you 5 years of my life, 40 hours a day for $1,000 flat fee. I'm not going to do that. No sane human being will ever do that. So at what point, what's covered in the fee and what isn't covered in the fee? So for example, in my retainer letters, I always say, I don't do litigation matters of any kind. Here are the services I'm going to provide. Anything else, we have to have a separate conversation and a separate fee. Make sure people know exactly what the fee covers and what it does not cover. Here are some things I won't do for you. Thirdly, how much you're going to be paid. What's your hourly rate, your daily rate? Is it going to be progress payments where we pay, at certain times based on milestone achievement? How? And last but not least, and this is the most important thing, when will payment be due? I cannot tell you how many contracts I look at, and good ones that were prepared by Wall Street law firms, that are crystal clear on the services and what's going to be done and who's going to do what and who's going to report to whom and all this kind of stuff. But when it comes to when payment is due, all of a sudden the language gets very, send us an invoice and we'll look at it and, we'll get back to you. And if we don't dispute the invoice, we'll pay, all of a sudden, when does a check arrive? When do you get the PayPal payment or the electronic payment? When does it hit your account? You want to know this. This has to be perfect. You have to know, when do you sue someone because they're paying late? When is a client paying late? Well, 30 days. Well, it doesn't say 30 days in the contract. It says upon completion, and you haven't completed yet. I got a punch list of 5 more things I want you to do. We have a term for this. We call it project creep. Project creep means you set out to do 5 things, but now the client wants 3 or 4 more things and they want them for the same price. Okay. Be very careful about this. Your contract has to be specific and precise on when payment is due. So X days after the invoice date, great. X days after receipt of invoice, that can be a little trickier. Okay, maybe because of some good reason the client didn't get the invoice for 15 days, and now you're looking at a 45-day payout. See how things can get crazy at time? Yes, payment must be due by the end of the month. That's precise. Payment upon completion. Bad idea. When is a project ever complete? Web designers, if we have any web designers out there, when is a website ever finished? It's never finished, right? You got to constantly negotiate that with your clients. Upon client payment will be due upon client's satisfaction or client's acceptance of the deliverables. Bad idea, because they can take forever to accept your deliverables. Last but not least, so these are the things. Be very careful. I can live with a lot of sloppy language in a contract as long as it's very clear, as long as I know what my client is doing, what they're not doing, and when they're going to get paid. Those are the 3 most important things. There are some other trouble spots in the contracts, but they're less of concern because you're going to have lawyers help you out with this. Warranties, okay? Obviously, every contract of every kind should have warranty disclaimers as much as the law will allow them. Sometimes they're enforceable, sometimes they're not, but you put them in there anyway. Make sure that you, as a consultant, you are not guaranteeing results. This is a very important thing. Now, when I do work for a client, I always warn, I will do my work to the best possible, highest level of care, in a professional manner, on time, whatever. But I cannot promise you you're going to have a nice life. I cannot promise you that your business will be successful. I cannot promise you won't be sued. I can't say, even though this contract, as far as I'm concerned, is perfect, there are some idiots out there that will sue you no matter what the contract says. I can't say that anything at all. You have to manage your client's expectations here. Every contract should have a clause saying that, I am not responsible for achieving a specific result, even if you tell me what that result is. Well, we want our production to triple. Okay, well, great. I'll certainly put the appropriate language in there, but it's really up to you, Chucko, to make sure that the production triples. That's not my problem. I'm not out there, in your factory every day helping you, that kind of thing. Limitation of liability. This is a very important clause. This is a clause that says that even if you screw up, all you got to do is give the client his money back, and that's it. You walk away. He can't sue you for anything else. He can't sue you for consequential damages, punitive damages, and all this other kind of crap, emotional distress, and all the stuff that people try to sue for. All you got to do, if you really do bite the pooch, all you got to do is give him his money back, and that's it. He's done. You're done with him. He can chew your butt off on Yelp if he wants to, but that's another thing. The other clause that is sometimes trouble, assignment of rights and work product. Clients want to own what you do for them, and that's okay to a point. But if you're using templates or form documents like I do, when I do a contract for you, you have every right to use it, but you don't own my template. I can take that template and use it for someone else, even if it's one of your competitors. Remember, as a contractor, you have to have the right to work for other people, and you can't do that if you never give your copyright to anyone. Okay, be very careful about that. If they want a copyright to the work, that's a big problem. That means that they own it. That they see you using it for someone else, they can shut you down. They can send you a nasty letter, have their attorneys send you a nasty letter and shut you down. Make sure that your assignment of work clause, there are certain states that are starting to restrict these now. California is one that I can think of. Make sure that while they have the right to use the work product that you create, they don't own it. And if they want the right to own it, make sure you price yourself accordingly, because you're never going to be able to do that kind of a thing again. You can't use that template again. Make sure you're pricing accordingly for it, and make sure that they don't get the rights until payment is made. Okay. Other trouble spots in the contract: insurance. We talked about insurance before. Non-compete clauses. I'm a hard ass when it comes to this. Independent contractors should never, ever sign a non-compete clause, a clause that says they won't work for other people. That's okay in an employment contract. That is not okay in an independent contractor clause. Independent contractors have the legal right by law to work for other people. Now, obviously, as a best practice, you should avoid working for 2 arch competitors at the same time. That's just a good best practice to do. That becomes a very hard thing to manage in your personal life, but there's nothing legally wrong with it. I don't recommend it, of course, but but don't do it. But you should never ever sign a non-compete clause ever. There are other clauses you can sign that are helpful. That are helpful in things. And again, now the statement of work. The statement of work is your responsibility. I'm responsible for doing the legal contract, but you are responsible for doing the statement of work. The statement of work is not a legal document, and it shouldn't contain any legal language at all. It's just simply a list of bullets, what you're going to do, what the timetable for completion is going to be, what specific deliverables the client's going to walk away with, what they're responsible for, what you're responsible for. It's all the business stuff. If you want, I have a template that I can send you if you're interested on this. I don't charge for it because it's frankly worthless. It's just a list of bullets, bullet points, like a checklist of bullet points. But I'm happy to send it to you. Send me an email. I won't charge you for it. But don't put legal language into your statement of work. Ideally, you want a situation where you have one form of contract, you use that with all your clients, but the statement of work changes with every new project that you take on. That's where you want to be, what we call a master consulting agreement. That's what you're trying to do. Okay, we talked about this a little bit about dealing with subcontractors. Let's shift gears now. Let's talk about marketing. Okay. I've had the privilege of working with over 20,000 small businesses in just about every line of work you could possibly imagine. And I can tell you this with absolute certainty. The whole books have been written about how to succeed in business, and 99% of them are utterly worthless. If you want to succeed in business, in a business of your own, small business, marketing is the key to success. It boils down to this one word. If you market yourself well and effectively, you will probably do very well. If you market yourself poorly, you will fail. This is the biggest difference, as far as I'm concerned, between working for yourself and working for someone else. When you work for a big company, you can have an exciting career indeed and not have to know anything about how sales happen. You could be in operations, you could be in finance. They have all kinds of cubby holes where they can bury you, where you don't have to know anything about selling. You can still do pretty well. You can have you can even be CEO someday. Sometimes even the lawyers become CEO, although usually when a company promotes general counsel to CEO, they're in trouble. That's when the lawyers are in charge of the company. This is a company that is not having a nice life. Okay, let's just be very honest about that. People don't buy your services, they buy you. The second biggest mistake that consultants make after underpricing themselves, they get so caught up with their client projects that they let their marketing slide. At any given time, you should be spending 20 to 25% of your total time on marketing. Right now, what I am doing right now, I consider marketing. No matter how busy I am, and believe me, I got 5 clients right now that urgently need me to get something done in the next 24 hours. I always take time for a marketing opportunity, because if I stop doing this, the phone stops ringing. I have to be constantly out there trolling, letting people know Cliff Ennico's out there. Hey, I'm still alive. You haven't heard me in 5 years, but listen, I'm still out there. And I did increase my rates recently, but I'm still pretty reasonable. You got to do stuff like this constantly, keep it in people's faces. If you're not spending at least 20, 25% of your total time on marketing, you are not giving that the time that it deserves. For any small service business, there are 4 pillars of your marketing strategy. Involvement in organizations and trade groups, and what most people do, make sure you're joining the right ones. If you're a lawyer and you belong to 15 bar associations, you're not going to get a whole lot of business out of that. I mean, they're fun. They have all kinds of seminars. You can learn a lot, continuing education and all that. They serve a function, but lawyers do not refer business to other lawyers usually. They don't. You're not going to they tend to be very protective of clients. What you should be doing is joining organizations where there is a large percentage of the people that you want to serve, your customers. What organizations do your customers join? Those are the organizations you want to join, and make sure you're one of the few lawyers there. That's how you make a lot of money. I was very lucky early in my career. I joined an organization of software developers in the early 90s. Now, why did I do that? Was I developing an app? No, I'm not a software developer. I just wanted to serve. I wanted to do software work, and I wanted to be the only lawyer in that group. And I was the only lawyer they knew. So whenever they needed a contract done, who'd they call? Cliff. Okay. Sometimes it's that easy. Okay. Your personal interaction with clients, your elevator pitch, how you sell people. I have a whole video online about how to sell, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. It's one of the best things I can offer you, and it's absolutely free. Your public speaking strategy. Get out there, start talking to business groups. When the pandemic starts easing up and we start having group meetings again, do webinars, do Zoom meetings. Call up the local organization of accountants or something like that and offer to do a program for them for nothing. They'll love you for it. They'll never say no. Whenever you offer to speak for free, they say yes. Okay, so learn how to speak, learn how to use those vocal cords. Those of you, millennials and younger who do everything on your phones, you still have a voice, learn how to use it. Okay, last but not least, your firm website and your LinkedIn profile. As we talked about before, you got to have a website. You got to have a brand identity. It's very hard to do on LinkedIn and Facebook and the other social media sites. You still got to have someplace on the web that's just your own. Okay. Again, on my YouTube video, it's called Marketing the One Person Business. This is a 75-minute video, which I give you absolutely free. If you go to youtube.com and search for Cliff Ennico, Marketing the One Person Business, you'll get right to it. If you want to see all my stuff, go to youtube.com, search for Cliff Ennico, and you'll see everything that I have there. Okay, so here are the 5 biggest mistakes consultants make. Underpricing themselves, we talked about that before. Selling too soon before understanding why it is that the clients will buy. My video here, how to sell just about anything to just about anybody on YouTube. This is a video that has won awards. I have right now a little over 300,000 hits on the views on this video. This video is being used by several companies as their training video for startup salespeople, for new salespeople. They're using this with my permission as a training video for their startup people. I have gotten emails from people in 55 countries around the world telling me that this video is the best thing they have ever seen on how to sell. And I'm offering it to you absolutely free. If you go to YouTube, search for Cliff Ennico, how to sell, I'm going to ask all of you to spend 75 more minutes in my company and listen to what I have to say about this, because I'm talking about some things. The secrets to selling, there's a lot of misinformation about there about how to sell. The biggest mistake you can make as a salesperson is to start talking too much about what's in your inventory, what you have to offer. The best way to sell on a one-on-one basis is to listen. Keep your mouth shut. Listen very carefully to what the customer really wants. And you have to kind of read between the lines sometimes in what they say. And then when you know what that is, you come out then and say, well, I can help you with that. I can do that for you. I can do whatever, X, Y, and Z. Just again, I have devoted 75 minutes in creating this YouTube video. Take a listen to it. I think you're in very good company. 300,000 people around the world have given this a thumbs up. I welcome you to join their company. Don't be specific. So again, not being specific about payment, letting projects get out of control. And last but not least, and this is very, very important, staying inside the box and not taking on projects that require a learning curve. Here's a dirty little secret about the consulting world, and it applies to any service business that I'm aware of. Very rarely will people pay you for doing things that are fun, interesting, exciting, creative, and fulfilling. Very seldom will they ask you to do something that's right squarely within your resume. It's something you've done 100 times before, and this is now going to be number 101. This doesn't happen. When clients call you, they usually are asking you for something that's a little bit on an angle to what you normally do. Well, Cliff, I know you do contracts. Well, I got this really weird contract. I'm going to be doing this, and I'm going to be transferring land into a nonprofit. It's always a little bit askew. Now, it's very easy to stay inside a box and say, well, I really don't do that. That's something not what I do. I don't really know anybody else who does. But this is how nature tells you where the opportunities are. I cannot tell you how many times this has happened in my career where a client has called me up. They've asked me to do something weird and different, and when I did it, I found out this was the tip of a huge iceberg. There were hundreds or thousands of other people who needed the exact same thing, and no other attorney was servicing that because they didn't know how to do it. Let's face it, none of you were born knowing what you know today. You know what you know today because at some point someone threw you a project, you did it, you learned it, and this is how you learn. You don't grow unless you get outside the box. Learn how to say yes to people who approach you with and don't get me wrong, there are limits to this. If somebody calls me up and says, hey, Cliff, we need you to help, you're helping designing a nuclear power plant, and we need it done in 30 days. Well, that's not something I can really help you with. I'd have to try to find somebody else to work with you on that one. But if someone is selling me, hey, Cliff, we have this business and we're in kind of a weird little market. We need a consulting agreement, but it's a weird kind of consulting service. My thought goes to, there are a lot of other people out there like this person. And if I'm the only lawyer in town who knows how to do this, I'm going to get all those people as clients. I'm going to learn how to do this. And this is how you grow. Okay. Again, these are the big mistakes. What happens when a client doesn't pay you? Again, I have another YouTube video. It's another hour-long video called Dealing with Deadbeats. If you go and search for that, you'll find me on YouTube. But here's the thing. The biggest thing here is when a client starts going south, stop work immediately. Big receivables problems almost always start out as little ones that get out of hand. That's what happens. The minute a client goes 31 days past an invoice date, stop, call them, be nice, say, hey, look, I know it's the pandemic. Everybody has kinds of problems here. What's going on? I see you're a little late this month. What's going on? How can I help you? Be on top of that. Don't keep performing work, when a client starts slowing down or stopping payment. Try to limit the damage. It may well be that they're on their way to bankruptcy and there's nothing you can do about it anyway, but stop digging that hole. Don't make that hole any deeper than it is now. Okay. Again, I have a whole video on this subject. Nothing burns your breakfast like when a client doesn't pay. Always ask for money up front. Make sure your clients are clear. There's a whole bunch of strategies you have to do to try to prevent bad receivables from happening. But when they do happen, you got to jump on them fast and try to work out a deal, before it gets out of control. Okay, at some point you want to grow your practice. The thing about you have to learn about any consulting business, whenever you're in a consulting business, what you're really selling is your time. And there's only 24 hours in a day, and there's only 7 days in a week. That's all any of us gets. Consulting is what we call a non-scalable business, meaning the only way to grow a consulting practice is either work more hours or add more people. That's what a non-scalable business basically is. In order to make more money, you have to spend more money and more time to get there. Okay, do you want to be a manager at some point? Now, I know some people who've gone into consulting, but they don't want to actually do the work. They want to hire people, and they want to be the manager of the office manager who organizes everything, deals with the clients and all that. And that's perfectly fine. That happens not to be me. I'm not that kind of a person, but there are some people like that. The only thing I will caution you is, if once you hire interns, even if you just hire like one intern, you are now a manager. You are no longer a consultant. You are a manager. You're going to have to look over everything that kid does, because if that kid screws something up, it's going to be your liability. That's going to happen here. So you're going to end up spending more time training that person to get to a certain level. Make sure you have the time and the patience to do it. Also, make sure that your employees, your interns, are not getting so close to your clients that they end up stealing all your business. That happens. People fall in love with your employees. The next thing you know, they're looking at your employee as their primary contact in the firm. Not a good thing. And then last but not least, plan your exit strategy. Those of you, especially who are in your 50s and 60s, we're not going to live forever. I know we're baby boomers. We all thought we were all going to live forever. We were never going to get to this stage of life. Well, guess what, people? We're there now. When I go to the liquor store, I no longer buy the wine that says best drinkable in 5 to 10 years. There was a time I used to buy that stuff. Okay, I'll sell it. I'll sell it. It'll be wonderful. I want the wine now you can drink as you're leaving the store. That's where I want to be now at this point. Okay, start thinking about your exit strategy. So let's wrap this up. Then we'll open the floor to some questions. I know Richard probably has a whole bunch. Don't become an accidental employee. Don't become so beholden to a particular client that you end up working for them, exclusively. That's a very bad place to be, and there's a good chance you'll be reclassified as an employee, which is a really horrible thing for everybody. Form an LLC, get an EIN. Don't use your social. Form an LLC, and don't worry about the S-Corp thing, unless you're in New York City. If you're in New York City, form an S-Corp. Be invisible in your home office. If you work out of your home, make sure that your neighbors don't even know you're doing it. Get a UPS store, mailbox, do all the stuff that I talk about in my YouTube video. Be invisible. If you're changing the character of your neighborhood, sooner or later, your neighbors will rat you out to the zoning police, and then you will have a problem with your home office. That's the only way it happens. Don't underprice yourself. If anything, overcharge. If you don't know how to price, go high and then offer people discounts until you know where the market is. Your contracts need to be 100% clear on when payment is due. I don't care if it's unclear on anything else, but make sure that that language in the contract is crystal clear. If you don't know when payment is due, then you won't be able to do anything about it when a client turns deadbeat. Big client relations problems always start out as little ones that get out of control. The minute a client starts wobbling and gets a little weird, you jump on that. Remember the old circus act, the guy that used to balance the plates on the spinning bamboo poles, and eventually he'd had 50 bamboo poles with plates, right? The key to that whole thing is he didn't have to worry about all of them. He only had to worry about the ones that were wobbling. The minute you see a client starting to wobble, you jump on that. Don't let that sit. When you stop marketing, your business begins to die. If you are not spending at least 25% of your total time on marketing related activities, sooner or later, that phone is going to stop ringing and you're going to have a cash flow problem. Then last but not least, in order to grow, you have to stretch. Don't be afraid to take on projects that are a little bit out of the ordinary because they may open up doors to a vast new area of practice for you. And you'll be one of the few people in the country that know how to do it. This is how you learn new things. When people are looking for a lawyer in a new area, let's face it. I mean, they don't know. It doesn't fit any of the boxes. So attorneys, especially, are very reluctant to take stuff on that doesn't fit within their little boxes, their little silos. You got to get outside those silos to grow. Don't be afraid to do it. And this is me, and this is all the stuff that I do. This is how you can get in touch with me if you want to. I never charge for an initial consultation. It may be a day or two before I can respond to you because I'm so busy. I never charge for an initial consultation. I would rather spend 10, 15 minutes on the phone and give you some free advice than have you guess wrong and come back at me with a problem that's going to cost $10,000, $15,000 to solve. That's why I exist. And also, too, you're giving me all kinds of great stuff that I can use in my columns and my books and stuff. But don't worry, I won't mention you by name. So don't be concerned about that. Your secret's safe with me. With that, Richard, that's all I have to say. We covered a lot of ground in a very short period of time. Let's open the floor to some questions.
All right, so it's going to take a second to bring everybody over from attendee to panelist to ask a question. So I'm going to start with Cliff. How many books have you written, and who have been some of your bigger, well-known customers over your expansive history?
Okay, well, let's take the easy one first. I have 16 books in print. Some of them are law books. I've written some legal treatises for lawyers that lawyers use, mostly form books and annotated form books and stuff like that. But I have some books out for the general public. My big bestseller now is a book called The Crowdfunding Handbook on how to use the crowdfunding portals to raise capital for mostly, tech companies, early stage tech companies. But a lot of other companies can use them as well. That's kind of my big bestseller right now. As far as who my biggest clients have been, and believe it or not, I can't talk about that. We're supposed to keep our identity strictly confidential. This is why lawyers are horrible at cocktail parties, because we can't talk about nothing. We can't talk about our clients. We can't talk about, because God forbid, you may know somebody. I may say, oh, this is this guy, Susie Cream Cheese, and I'm making up a name. You might know this person. And then I'm in trouble because I can't, if I start blabbing about what my clients are up to, I lose my license. So I can't get involved in that very much. So I can't really talk, but let's just say that there are some companies now in the Inc. 500 that I helped get off the ground, back in the day when they first got started.
That's good. The second question was a test question. I kind of knew the answer, but I was like, is he going to say? Is he going to be confidential?
Yeah, that's right. Well, no, because it gets embarrassing because people sometimes who have never dealt with an attorney before will ask me for references, and that's hard to do because in order to give a reference, I have to disclose that I have a relationship with them, which I'm not supposed to do. Attorneys have that's why I always tell people, also to never ask your attorney to sign an NDA. A non-disclosure agreement, because we are bound by a very strict obligation of confidentiality that's built into our code of ethics. If we ever did that to you, you could have our license even without an agreement. So, never ask an attorney or an accountant to sign a non-disclosure agreement. It's not necessary at all. Believe me, if we understand anything at all, is that we can't go out and talk to cocktail parties about your stuff. So, any questions from the group?
Well, let's see who we got here. Who's up for a question for Cliff Ennico?
Cliff, that was a really awesome amount of information. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I wish I could send that back to me 8 years ago when I started this adventure to be my own small business, because I've been stumbling around in the dark the whole time. And That clearly gave a lot of guidelines on how to set yourself up correctly out of the gate and be able to protect yourself, have clear definitions for your clients. I wrote that down. I still need some work on that. And don't ever say when the website is finished.
Well, I know this presentation is a little bit of a fire hose. I get it. I'm covering a lot of ground from about 5,000 feet up. That's really why I keep pointing you to these YouTube videos, because I spend a lot more time on those, drilling down into more detail on what's important, what you do, what you don't do. I mean, this YouTube, I intend ultimately for the YouTube video to be my memorial. When I do pass on to the next life, you know, instead of an epitaph, I'm just going to say Cliff Ennico, 1954 to whatever. Check out his YouTube channel at, that's what it's going to be, and you'll know more than you'll ever want to know about this idiot, who he was, that kind of thing. It's going to be my legacy for posterity. That's why I'm doing it.
Well,
so listen.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I'm going to pass the talking stick so some other people with actual questions get a chance.
Okay.
Robbie, catch the potato.
All right. Hey, Cliff. How's it going?
Hey, Robbie, how you doing?
Doing good. So I'm in early stages of starting a finance and accounting consulting business. So that's kind of my background, where I'm coming from with that. And I have one client that I'm working with right now where I've been bouncing around trying to figure out an answer to this question. So I'm not a tax accountant. I'm a more management side of things. And one of the things you touched on was the protection of certain earnings in an S corporation from FICA taxes. And my understanding is that those earnings can actually be recharacterized as wages, like when they're distributed, based dependent on the business. And I just didn't know if you could comment on that. So that's
that whole S corp thing. Well, first of all, the one point I kind of want to reinforce is you don't worry about this when you're first starting out. When you're first starting out with an LLC, you're going to take the full self-employment tax hit. You're going to take everything. You're going to be income tax, FICA, food, and Medicare, the whole bit. And when you reach a certain level of income, which is usually around $100,000 in net income a year, that's when you should look at the S corporation option, because the tax benefit then will make sense. What you're saving money on is FICA and Medicare tax, which is about 15.3% of your taxable income right now. So the numbers have to be pretty significant before any tax savings there is going to be significant. So that's number one. But number two is you want to make sure that an accountant helps you with this. There are formulas that the IRS has established, some best practices as to how much should be treated as wages and how much of it should be a distribution of profit. And you want to make sure that you fall within that. If you're too greedy, then you will be. The IRS always has the power to come in and recharacterize it, despite whatever you think you're doing. You will need an accountant's help for that. I would not recommend that, and payroll taxes. Do not, if you have employees, never, ever, ever do payroll taxes yourself. The rules are simply too complicated. CPAs frequently make mistakes. And if CPAs are making mistakes, that is one area that you don't want to tread into. Get a payroll service, use Paychecks or one of those people. Get them to take that burden off you. It's well worth the money you pay these people.
Cool.
So that's
good advice.
Anyway, anybody here in New York City, by the way? Anybody here in New York City? Flash your mute sign at me so I can see. Actually, there's nobody there. Let me take 2 minutes and just talk about that. New York State, alone of all the states, has a rule that says that when you form a New York LLC, or if you're an out-of-state LLC that's doing business there, you have to publish a legal notice in 2 newspapers in the county where you're doing business. One has to be a weekly, one has to be a daily, and you have to run, it's like a classified ad, and you have to run this ad for 6 weeks and then show the state proof, an affidavit of publication, that you did this thing, that you published this. There is absolutely no legal reason for this. It's simply a political thing to keep the newspaper industry on life support. It's wholly a political thing. Now, if you're in upstate New York, if you're in Albany or on Long Island, the cost of doing this publication may be a couple of $100 maximum. It's not really an onerous thing. If you're in New York City, however, that publication can be as much as $2,000 to $3,000, and you get absolutely nothing for it. So in New York City, we lawyers, whenever we have clients in New York City, we say, look, the LLC is a great thing to do, but unfortunately you're in New York City where it's prohibitively expensive. Do an S Corp, because with an S Corp, you don't have this publication. You don't have to do this publication thing. The law only applies to LLCs. So by doing an S Corp, even though they complicate your life a little bit, you'll save a lot of money. I mean, just by doing that, I've saved you $2,000-$3,000 of your hard-earned money just by doing that. That's what's weird about New York City. And I know people ask about this. So if anybody's listening to this program on archive who are from New York City, that's why I say that the S Corporation is the way to go. It might be cheaper for you to move outside of New York and then do an LLC. I actually have clients do that. You know what? I'm tired of living in the Bronx. I'm going to go up to Westchester, and then you can form it for $200. That's all it costs you. So sometimes it's better to do that, or get yourself a relative or something and use their mailing address or something. People play all kinds of games in New York City because of that stupid publication requirement. That's the reason I said that. So as not to be mysterious. Anyway.
Cool. Well, thanks for your time. I'm gonna have to jump off, but thanks for the great information. I'll let somebody else hop on if they want.
That's okay. So that means I get to tell you some of my stories here. All right. Actually, I'm going to close with something. I know I kind of rushed through this. I can't tell you how important it is not to get caught up in your resume. Do not become a prisoner of your resume. When new opportunities come up, even though they may be weird and they don't really sound like stuff you should be doing, say yes anyway. Because it can open up incredible new doors. I'll share with you. This is a story. I share this in my How to Sell video, but I think I can do it in 5 minutes. But in August of 2004, I was in my backyard, grilling hamburgers for dinner in my t-shirt and shorts, and my cell phone went off, and I saw it was Entrepreneur Magazine. Now, at the time, I was writing a couple of articles, for Entrepreneur, on legal stuff mostly, but I wasn't a staff columnist. I wasn't one of their regular people. So I pick up the phone, it's a Saturday afternoon too, 95 degrees, and I'm calling up Cliff Ennico. Cliff, thank God you picked up. It was the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine. She was calling me on a Saturday, and and here's what was going on. She explained it to me. They were doing a panel discussion in New Orleans the following Monday, 2 days later, for people who sell stuff on eBay. Entrepreneur Magazine at the time was in negotiations with eBay to do a special edition of their magazine specifically for eBay sellers. And they were going to launch this new magazine at eBay's annual trade show. It was called eBay Live, which was going to be in New Orleans 2 days later. Okay. In conversations with eBay's management, the eBay people asked if it would be possible to get someone on the panel who could talk about the legal issues of selling things online, the legal and tax things you have to do, basically what I just covered here in this presentation. Now, and she saw my name. She saw my name in her Rolodex, so she picked up the phone and she called me and she goes, Cliff, I know it's short notice, but can you be in New Orleans on Monday to talk about this? And I said, my first one was, an eBay lawyer? They are looking for a lawyer that specializes in eBay crap. It's in online retail. I mean, e-commerce, keep in mind, this is 2004. E-commerce is in its infancy. Amazon and eBay had just gone public a couple of years earlier. This was all brand new. There were maybe one big law firm in Wall Street that had an e-commerce partner. This was major. This was state-of-the-art stuff. But I'm enough of an entrepreneur to know you never say no when these things come up, because these could open incredible doors. So I asked her, I said, well, let me ask you a couple of questions. This is kind of short notice, obviously. How long do I have to speak for? How many slides do you need? Oh, Cliff, 10, 15 minutes, maybe 1 to 2 slides. That's all we need here. I said, okay. Now, see, I may not know much about eBay. Okay, and I knew what eBay was. I had an account. I bought a couple of things, for my mom, on eBay. But I'm no expert on e-commerce. But I said, you know what? If all they need is 10, 15 minutes and 2 slides, I could do this. I'm confident enough as a speaker. If all you needed from Cliff Ennico is 15 minutes and 2 slides, I can talk about subatomic particle physics. I can talk about that Higgs boson doohickey that they found last year, the gravitational waves of Einstein, which they finally proved after 50 years. I could talk about, if that's all you need, okay, an hour? No, but 15 minutes, yeah, I can do that. So I told him, yeah, I'll do this. Great. Cliff, thank God. Listen, my assistant's going to call you. Please apologize apologize to your family, but we need to fly down tomorrow. It's a Monday morning thing. And by the way, we need the slides tonight because we're going to overnight the presentation down there. No trouble at all. So I finished the hamburgers. And as I'm doing the hamburgers now, I'm thinking, oh God, what am I going to do here? All right. So I start thinking, and I say, okay, selling online, selling sales tax. They probably don't know that when you sell stuff online and the buyer's in the same state, you have to collect sales tax. All right, that's a slight income tax. A lot of people sell on eBay as a hobby. They start making tons of money, and all of a sudden they got a business. I could do the whole hobby versus business thing, and all this, right? So, but by the time I finished the hamburgers, I had at least 5 slides in my head. I had too much stuff, right? So I sent the slides up to the lady afterwards, and then that Monday I flew down to New Orleans the next day, and that Monday I was on a panel in a room with 5,000 people, on a panel with some of the top names in entrepreneurship were there. I can't mention names, but these were superstars in the world of entrepreneurship. And there's little Cliff Ennico there on this panel with all these other people. And there's the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur and the CEO of eBay, who was at the time Meg Whitman, sitting in the front row going like this, okay? Good things were going to come from this, but I didn't realize how soon it was going to come. So we do the presentation, we shake hands, we sign each other's books, and I'm stepping off the platform, and all of a sudden I'm surrounded by 5-6 people wearing light blue shirts and khaki pants, which I later found out was the eBay uniform. This is what they used to wear at the corporate headquarters in San Jose, California. And these people were members of eBay's seller education team. I had no idea what a seller education team did. But they told me this is a group of people that basically flew around the country giving presentations to eBay sellers on how to build real businesses out of the stuff that they're selling on eBay. And they were looking for someone to join their team and give lectures on the legal and tax issues of selling on eBay. This was the setup. This is why they wanted me there, was because they wanted to recruit somebody for their seller education team. So I said, well, what's involved? Okay, it's once a month. It's in a different city every month. You fly out on Friday. There's an all-day presentation. We need a 90-minute PowerPoint, kind of like what I just did. And, you do your presentation. We all go someplace really great for dinner, and then you fly back on Sunday morning. Once a month. Okay. And do you pay your people? Yes, we pay your people. How much do you pay your people? $10,000 per speech. Plus expenses. I was being offered a $120,000 annual contract from eBay for putting together one 90-minute presentation. Yep, I can do that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are going for this, right? So I turned off the world. I remember I went to the airport in New Orleans. I got up my trusty laptop. I went to Amazon. Sorry, eBay, but it was still the best place to buy books. And I swear I spent $1,500 on books in one sitting. I bought a copy of every book that had eBay in the title. If it had eBay in the title, I bought it. I mean, the UPS guy loved me. I had a 6-foot size stack of books. You can still see some of them in the background over here. And for 3 weeks, I immersed myself in eBay and eBay commerce. I only took client emergency calls. That's all I did. I became an expert. I did the presentation. I went back and forth with the eBay people from time. And then the following month, I started doing these things for $10,000 a pop, which ended up being even more because they wanted me to do trade shows on top of that. I actually became they used to call me, it was called eBay University at the time. And I was known, this was at the time when all the Harry Potter books were hot. They called me the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor of eBay University, because I was talking about all the legal and tax stuff, all the bad stuff. And for several years, I did this, and it was a remarkable relationship and out of that, I got so many other opportunities. I'm the author of 3 books today on the legal and tax aspects of online retail, because on that one hot summer day in August of 2004, my cell phone rang, someone called and offered me something bizarre. I said yes, and it ended up taking me someplace utterly fabulous, that is now a major cornerstone of what I do for a living. That's my little, if you want an inspirational story, there's Cliff Ennico's story right there. Don't say no when weird opportunities present themselves, because this is how nature, or God, if you are religious, shows you where the opportunities are.
I was going to ask you what you meant about stretch, because I wanted you to talk to that, and that was even better than I think if I had asked you the question. So good for you.
Well, it's a perfect illustration about how things happen in the real world. Success comes often when you're not looking for it. You pick up the phone, all of a sudden there's this weird guy with a funny accent and he's talking about something, that you've never heard of before. This can be the opportunity of a lifetime, but you have to accept it as such. If you get locked in your little box and say, well, no, I'm a lawyer, we don't really do this kind of stuff, you miss out on a lot of this stuff. Also too, you meet some really weird people too, which I'm always up for meeting weird people. I'm up for that, anytime. Good. So if there's nothing else, I want to thank Autonomy Unlimited for having me today. Again, if you want to know more about Cliff Ennico, check out my YouTube channel. Some of it you'll agree with, some of what you probably don't, but I guarantee there's stuff on there that you will not hear anywhere else. I don't talk about the usual textbook stuff. I talk about the stuff that no one else talks about. And maybe because they're afraid to talk about it a little bit. And I'll make it funny. The one warranty, I always tell people, the one warranty that I will make, and one promise I will make, remember I said don't make promises about results, but the one promise I will make, and I think I'm the only attorney in the United States that will make this promise, I will make you laugh. Whatever it is. And no matter what we're doing together, I will make you laugh at some point. That's the Cliff Ennico promise to the world.
Well, that's pretty good. A lawyer who doesn't guarantee his work, but he does guarantee to make you laugh.
You got it.
I didn't see. Was there one more question? I thought maybe somebody else had come on video just before Cliff leaves.
Rod came on video. There you go.
Hey, Rod.
Hey, Rod. Thanks, Joshua and Richard, for putting this on. Thank you, Cliff, for the presentation. And you mentioned like niche markets, and so I found this thing about tax and mortgage overages, essentially. And this is a business that I'm starting to pursue. I bought the course and everything. And so I'm at the very, very early stages of it. And you were mentioning contracts and stuff like that. And one of the things that they mentioned with the tax overages process is when you speak to the clients, don't really tell them how much money that they're getting. Because they can essentially do this themselves and cut you out of it. And so I guess my question is how do you put that in a contract? I mean, I know it's not an easy way to answer that. But,
Boy, yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I'm not too familiar with the whole concept of mortgage overages, but I've read a couple of things about it. But I guess here's the thing: whenever you're in an information business like this one, you kind of are training your competition a little bit. And you can't really avoid that to some extent. What you need is for people to have a way of coming back and ordering more and more from you over time so that they become kind of dependent on you, so that they really can't do this themselves. You really can't do it in a contract, Rod, but you can do it in the way you conduct your business. So for example, you'll get them to do the initial training course. They'll pay, $195 for the training course, but then every 6 months you do updates and you charge them $50 to participate in a call like this one. You keep them coming back for more. So even though they're doing it on their own, they're still dependent on you. In some way, you have to make them dependent on you to make them keep coming back for more. It's tricky because, again, if you're training people to do a certain thing, sooner or later they'll get so good at it that they don't need you. And I kind of joke about this too, Rod. I say my best clients outgrow me. They grow so fast that sooner or later they don't need a Cliff Ennico now. Now they need a big firm with 50 lawyers and all kinds of people running around doing stuff. They need that level of support, which a simple solo guy like me can't do. So I'm sort of caught in a world where my best clients outgrow me. It's only the ones that don't make it that stay with me. That kind of thing. But you want to avoid that too, though. Find a way that they can grow along with you. It's really hard to do that in the contract, but obviously, also too, from a business point of view, don't give them so much information that they don't need you anymore. They can do it themselves. Keep them coming back for more. Do an update program like, okay, here's the latest development on the pandemic. Okay, so now, 3 months ago, I was doing programs on how to survive the pandemic. Now I'm trying to get those same people to come back and listen to, okay, now the world's starting to open up again, but it's not going to look the same as it did before. Here's how it's going to be different, and here's how you survive. Keep them coming back to you. Always have some reason for them to stay in touch with you, and charge them, of course, each time they do it. That's the best. Without knowing more, send me an email and maybe point me to a link or something. Show me where this program is that you're thinking of buying into. And once I get a little bit more education, I may be able to give you something better than what I just gave you. But for now, that's the best I can do.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna watch a couple of your YouTube videos, and like I said, this is at the very early stages. So maybe watching some more of your videos, I'll have better questions.
Yeah, and look out for scams too, because a lot of these, financial things, they end up being not what you think that they are. Just be careful. There's a lot of fly-by-night stuff out there. I don't know. I know a little bit about this, but I'm just a little concerned that if you're not dealing with the right kind of people, this could end up being a scam. So just be careful. That's all.
Excellent question, Rod. Thanks for speaking up. Cliff, thank you for taking so much time out of your busy schedule. For everyone watching at home, Cliff's site is succeedinginyourbusiness.com. He also has cliffennico.com, but if you look, I think the succeedinginyourbusiness.com is the main site that you'll find the valuable things organized, at least on the front page. Very powerful offering of resources there. And Cliff, if every entrepreneur could hear one bit of wisdom for you in the future, what would it be?
Okay, the answer is don't give up. Okay, these are the best of times for entrepreneurs, believe it or not, because disruption benefits us. We're living in a world now that's being disrupted in a lot of big ways because of the pandemic and everything that's going on around it. This creates opportunities for entrepreneurs. Don't be so scared about where the nightly news reports that you're not looking for where the opportunities are. How is the world going to be disrupted, and where are there new opportunities for people like me? And when you see an opportunity there, jump on it, because people now are much more in a listening mood. In good times, people don't listen to new stuff. Now they're looking. Everybody's looking for new ways and new solutions to doing things, and that's where people like us fit in perfectly. Be part of the solution.
Thanks again for your wisdom. That was really good too. The don't give up, the stretch.
And don't be intimidated.
Yeah, don't be intimidated. There's a lot of good wisdom. So even if you're watching this live, go back and watch the replay. There's more nuggets you can mine out of this. And thank you everyone for watching this guest speaker engagement. This is an episode which will give you longevity and help to reduce your risk in your hobby turning into your business. And we'll catch you this week for the last lecture, graduation lecture Friday night. Thank you everyone for tuning in and not dropping out.